Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. Today we are honored to have the Cuban Ambassador, Lianys Torres. Lianys, how are you doing this afternoon?
Well, fine. Thank you for having me.
Well, let me tell you, when I heard that you were coming to Houston, I said, I've got to speak to her because I've covered Cuba before. I've had a lot of conversations here about Cuba. And I think the problem that we have is many people misunderstand all about Cuba. So my first question to you is, tell me a little bit about how was Cuba formed?
How was formed?
How did it come to be? The new Cuba.
The new Cuba, where after 1959, we got a revolution in Cuba that was head by Fidel Castro, Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro. And it came to power after decades of being a neo-colony under governments that didn't took care of our people. And Fidel and the revolutionary power came with a program that was in which the Cuban people, the Cuban men and the Cuban women were the center of everything. We had since then free education, free and universal education, free and universal health care. For example, my family was not a wealthy family before the revolution, and we were able to go to the university to study free since kindergarten to PhD, and it's the same with the healthcare, and that is how you have the new Cuban that is different from the one that we had before 1959.
What was Batista, the part of the old Cuba, like? What was the lifestyle of the average Cuban citizen? I'm not talking about the elite. I'm talking about the average Cuban citizens. What was their life like?
It was difficult. It was difficult because they had they didn't have a proper health care, the one that is needed for a human being. The same with education. You have people in the countryside that depend of certain crops, for example, like sugar. And when the crops finished, they didn't have jobs. You have in the countryside many children that were unattended, talking about health care, that didn't go to school because they have to work since they were very little to help their families to live, to have money to eat. And everything changed. Now we have, since then, we have teachers, we have doctors, even in the more remote areas of our country, in the mountains. And the situation was difficult for them. And that changed with the revolution.
Usually revolutions don't occur unless enough people are mad with their current government. Now, after the revolution occurred, it is understood that Fidel Castro attempted to have relationships with both sides of the Cold War, if you will, both the American side and the Russian side. Can you mention anything about that?
Well, there was a hostile attitude towards Cuba since the beginning of the revolution from the U.S. government. And it was not the same with the Soviet Union. And since then, the situation with the US, the bilateral relation and the bilateral political situation has been difficult.
Now, you have been embargoed. There has been an embargo on Cuba since the inception of Cuba, since the beginning of Cuba. And many believe that is the reason why the Cuban economy could never develop to the state that it would be otherwise. Would you say that pretty much a boot was on your neck from the time you started as a country?
That's right. Since February 1962, there has been you call it an embargo, we call it a blockade, it's the same. It is the most comprehensive and long, talking about years, sanction system that have exist against a country, the one that is against Cuba. And it has been difficult for our economy to develop on those conditions. For example, we have not access to the main financial institutions in the world that a normal country have access to, and that give access to, by the way, to credits to develop infrastructure, industries of any kind. We don't have that privilege. We don't have, it's difficult for a normal company in a third country to have economic and trade relation with Cuba because we are a sanctioned country first. And since 2021, a country that were re-included in the list of state-sponsored terrorism. So companies are afraid to be fined, as it has happened in the past, for having relation with Cuba, with Cuban counterparts in our country. So it's difficult to develop in those conditions. Cuba cannot import anything that has more than 10% of US components. So that's the reason from which we don't have planes, for example, because the US components are high and so on. And it happens with machineries for our industries, and it happens with the rest of the technologies, we could call it.
You explained earlier that one of the reasons you don't have machinery is that 10% rule, meaning if 10% of the components of any piece of equipment comes in there, those companies are liable to sanction. Does that not really say that even if a Norwegian company or a company in Nigeria or Brazil, if any of them attempted to give you a machine, given that they may have a microprocessor that makes up 10%, they won't sell you that equipment because, again, they are liable to sanction from the United States.
That's right. They cannot do it. They cannot sell it to Cuba.
So every country in the world is blackmailed from being able to do business with Cuba, even if they don't agree with the American policy.
They are not allowed to sell anything that has more than 10% of US components. That's a tough rule.
Now, with all of those, because I've always been fascinated with Cuba, forgetting about ideology, forgetting about economic systems, etc., that a company under dire straits had been able to send as many doctors around the world and educate a lot of doctors from around Central America, the Caribbean, free of charge. How can you do that, and why do you do that?
You know, our people we are educated since we are little with solidarity values. Solidarity is very important for Cuba. It's part of us. It's part of our culture. It's part of our mindset. And we practice that with every country that is in need of any kind of, like this one, of doctors, of medicine. And we have sent doctors to more than 100 countries that have asked Cuba for that help, that kind of help. We have done that. But at the same time, some countries need to have their own doctors, or those who, for example, in very underserved areas or underserved communities, don't have access. Their population don't have access to doctors. I've never seen a doctor in their life. They have asked us to graduate doctors. And there's a Latin American School of Medicine in Cuba that have graduated for free thousands of doctors from Africa, from Latin America, from Asia, and more than 200 from the US. Young Americans that lived here in underserved communities had gone to Cuba, have become physicians for free, and have come back to the US to serve most of them in their communities. And that is something that we do with proud to help the people of those countries.
Now, a lot of people would listen to this interview and they're saying, there is this Cuban ambassador coming to America, and she is going to tell you all the beautiful things about Cuba. But in reality, it is a darn communist country that's sending terrorists all over the world. First of all, I'm curious because if you're sanctioned as much as you're sanctioned and you don't have the resources for all these other things, where are you getting the resources to be terrorists?
We are not terrorists. We are a people, we are a country, and our people, we love peace. We are a country of peace. We are a country of solidarity. We are a welcoming country that even Americans, someone could think, I want an American. I won't go to Cuba because we don't have good relation with Cuba. Maybe I could be attacked or rejected or something. No, we are not raised. We haven't been raised hating people. We are clear the difference between the relation between governments and the relation between people. We are a country of peace. We don't export terrorism. We send doctors to countries that are in need of health care, and they don't have enough manpower in their healthcare system, and they ask us for help for that. But they are our army, if you want to call it, is an army of white
White coats.
The doctors' coats.
Well, let me just say, I'm originally from Panama, and my perspective is more of an international perspective. So I really don't generally fall for the propaganda, neither from the United States or from Cuba or from anywhere else.
Yeah.
I simply concentrate on what the deeds are of any particular country, and any country that I find is willing to give healthcare to or give to educate people at a low cost or for free. I think it's good. I think our country here, America, should kind of take note that the birth rate death in Cuba is actually less than it is here in the United States of America, and that most people can get health care, something that we're still trying to get for a lot of our own people here in this country. Now, earlier on, I asked this question in a session that you had that I still want an answer for. I think I want a better answer for. And that was when, after the revolution with Fidel Castro, it was demanded that reparations be paid to all businesses and people whose property was nationalized, understood. And I understand that Cuba paid everyone except the United States because of certain reasons. Of course, I think Black people in the United States are still trying to get their reparations as well, but that's another subject. Please tell me, why is it that Cuba, first of all, has not done that, or why should they do that, given that most of that wasn't even purchased from Cubans?
Well, before the revolution, as I was explaining before, most of the land, most of our main industries were in U.S. companies' hands. And after the revolution, there was a process of nationalization. And we had, as you were saying, properties also from other countries, Spain, Canada, France, Germany, Switzerland, and we compensate all of them during years. But most of the main industries were in U.S. hands. So the value of that compensation was much, much bigger than those that I spoke before. And back then, the only thing that we export was sugar. So the only thing that we had to pay to the U.S. was sugar. We used to have a quota that we export to the U.S., and the plan was to pay with that to compensate those companies. But then the U.S. government came and established the sanctions, cut the Cuban sugar quota, and we didn't have a way to pay. For example, you could think, okay, but you have money in the bank, in the national bank. No, but Batista took that money when he left Cuba. So we didn't have how to pay. It was a new government with the country trying to survive. And then you have the main superpower, your main trade partner, who sanctioned you. How were we going to pay?
Now, you're sanctioned more so than China, Russia, or any other country in the world, and then asked at the same time to compensate or provide reparation to those people's properties who were nationalized in a revolution. Am I correct?
Yes.
Going forward, because we want to be forward looking, what is your expectation now that we have an ambassador here in the United States, you? What is your expectation in creating a better relationship with the United States and having the United States citizens beyond the government understand the reality of what's happening in Cuba, both with sanctioning and with actual relationships?
Well, our government has conveyed to the U.S. government our will to advance, to have better bilateral relations. And the only condition that we put on the table is respect, which is a basic rule. Respect to our sovereignty, respect to and not interference in our domestic issues, which is a basic rule, and those are principles that are in the UN Charter. We, as neighbors, we could be trading, we could be cooperating in healthcare, environment. We have common problems. We share a sea border. For you is south, for us is north. We have issues of law enforcement, like human trafficking, like drugs, like trafficking in persons. Those are issues that we have to address as neighbors and should be cooperating in all that. But the economic and commercial trade is an important issue because you are a superpower and we are on a small economy that that wants to have a better relation with the US. But with the sanction, it's difficult to advance. It's something that we have, you were saying, a boot in our neck. Mm-hmm. It is like that. It is a boot in our neck. It's something that is trying to strangle day per day, and it's difficult to advance with those conditions. But as I said, we are ready to do it, to advance with the US, to sit and talk about any issue with that basic rule that I said before.
I purposefully did not ask anything about communism, capitalism, or any of the isms, and I'm not going to. And the reason I'm not going to touch those particular issues, because it means something to every particular different country. In fact, I can find some good and bad in every single system. But what I want to ask you is, as the last questions, are Cubans happy?
Well, we are enduring difficult times in Cuba now because of the economic situation that we are going through. Our government has the goal to provide more for our people, is trying to do it under these extreme and difficult conditions. And when you have scarcities and all that, it's difficult. You were talking about happiness. Mm-hmm. I'm happy because I know that I have a government that cares about the people, that has a plan to go forward, that works every day to do it, and uh, I don't have to worry because my daughters go for free to the university. I don't have to worry because if I get sick, I can go to the hospital for free. So those are needs, basic needs that we have covered. But it's difficult, as I said, in the current condition that the Cuban normal Cubans are enduring. The daily life is difficult, but we know we are going to succeed. We know that it will take time, but we have plans to do it. And as I said, our government works 24 hours, 24 by 7 to achieve that.
I said that was the last question, but I lied. There's one more question. There's one more question. There's one more question.
Yeah, you journalists are always tricky.
Yeah.
Are always tricky.
But this one here is a bit more serious. And I think in as much as Americans are going to learn a lesson dependent on who they elect in the next Congress or in the next presidential election, I want to hear about one more thing about Cuba. Can somebody in Cuba go on the streets and say, I don't really like my government right now, and not get killed?
Killed for that?
No. It's not. I know it sounds funny, but people in America believe once you speak out against Fidel Castro, once you speak out against any of the Castros or anybody in your government,
no.
Are they going to be sanctioned, thrown in jail,
no. No.
Why? Where is that coming from?
I don't know. It's propaganda against Cuba. It's part of there's a campaign of misinformation on Cuba, and anything that happened in Cuba that can be common in another part of the world, in Cuba, it is magnified when it happened in Cuba. We have law, we have rules that you follow them, you don't go to jail. We complain every day about things that happen in the country in a positive way, in a constructive way, trying to find solutions to that, and you don't go to jail for that. I think it's part of the misinformation that is against Cuba, because you need a way to justify this criminal, this genocide that is the sanction system that is preventing us for having a better life.
Ambassador Lianys Torres, thank you so kindly for the interview.
Thank you so much for having me.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.